Hi everyone. Customer recently asked me, could Nintex Workflow Cloud forms act as a public web form for accessing SharePoint Online? I think it's a great question, very relevant. A lot of people are thinking about that at the moment. How can we expose our SharePoint Online Office 365 environment safely to the wider world, bringing in our customers, our vendors, our partners, even members of the public? So I thought knock up a real quick example or demo of how we can do that using a customer feedback example. Let's have a look at the solution first and then how we built it. Got my SharePoint list. Really straightforward. This is where I want to capture my information, and I do have another list which is my products lookup list, and we'll see that in the build how we actually got there. But what we want to do is open up an incognito window, just because this is a public anonymous form. We're outside of any domain, any authentication. So let's just open that up. This can be embedded on a website, for instance, sent out in a link in email, embedded in a signature if you want to give us some feedback. Put my customer name in here, customer email. Select the product that's from SharePoint. So this is outside on my Workflow Cloud form, which you'll see in the build, and we'll give some feedback. Submit. Now, if you want to do star ratings, if you wanted to do yes, no's, all of these things work in the external form. Form's being submitted. If we were using Google Recaptcha, that would ask me to validate before I submit. And if we were using a redirect, that would bring me back to the website that I want to use. So let's jump back to SharePoint. You'll see that I've got my feedback about email that's actually just come in, if we have a look at that. So feedback received, name has left some feedback about RPA, if we wanted to add the comments, so on and so forth. So that's come back to somebody inside my domain, in my internal environment, and I'll just refresh the feedback list. It's added that line item into that list, which is pretty cool. So that's how an end user would interact, or somebody within the organization. Let's take a look at how we built that solution over the next few minutes. So I'm going to start with two SharePoint lists, one to capture my customer feedback when it comes in from the outside world, a couple of columns, title, product, customer name, customer email, feedback, and I am going to allow them to look up a product of which they want to give us feedback on. So any of the Nintex products, and I notice I am missing one, so I'm just going to pop that in just now. Nintex RPA, there we go. So I'll give them the options in the form, external to SharePoint. I'm not going to create any guest users or anything like that. I'm going to use Nintex Workflow Cloud as my externally facing form. So let's jump to Nintex Workflow Cloud. And first thing I need to do is create a new connection to SharePoint. Now I've already done that here. There is a SharePoint Online connection that's been created. So I'm going to now create a data source to look up that list of products in SharePoint. So we'll just add a new data source. This means I can use the data lookup control on the form. So let's call this SP product list. Just for sake of continuity, let's make sure I've got a capital P at the start of that. Description. A list of all our products, catalog, whatever you want to call it. Connector, so I'm going to select my SharePoint Online connector here, and the operation that I want to perform is querying a list. So I'm going to query the product list in SharePoint from my Nintex Workflow Cloud form. So let's select the connection. There's my SP Online. SharePoint URL, I'm simply going to grab that from SharePoint, nice and easy. So let's just capture that there. And select the tick. It's going to enumerate through all the lists that are available, and there should be one called products, which is down here. Any columns that I want to bring back, select the columns available for use from this external data source. So if you don't select any, you'll be able to select all of them. So I'm just going to leave it blank. Obviously, I could just select title as the option, which will then only bring back title, which is fine. And if I want to set an item limit to minimize the amount that's coming back, I can do that. Now I'm going to save that data source. So I'm now ready to build my form, which is then going to simply do one action. It's just going to create a list item. So it's essentially being that external provider for my SharePoint list. And I'm going to create that form as an external URL. So I'm not going to authenticate this form because I want my customers, my partners, and my vendors to actually interact with it. I don't want to obstruct them by having to enter a username and password. So I'm just going to select a form. And I'm going to select anyone with the form URL. So the alternative is authenticated using the tenancy, but that would require all of those people to have access to sign the form. So I'm not going to bother with branding too much just for the sake of time. I might go and revisit that one later on. But what I want to do is turn this form here into something that my customers and members of the public can actually give me feedback on. So what I'm going to do is, using a few text shorts, I'm going to capture, essentially replicate the name, the company, the email address, the comments that's come through, and also what is the product that they're giving me feedback on. All right, so we'll just configure these up. So this one was customer name. This one was, I think, company. Let's just jump back to that form, make sure. Customer name, customer and email, customer feedback, product, title. Let's just delete that one, not required. Customer email. Let's call this one the customer feedback, and we'll make that one small, but it's going to auto resize anyway, so I'm just keeping that nice and neat. Data lookup. We'll configure that to point to that product list. I'm going to select an item limit here of 5,000 items. Let's jump back to the configuration just to complete that. Title, is it required? Make it visible, make it read only, and so on. Just so people know what kind of form they're filling in, let's just pop in a label. I could put some branding in there if I want to just pop an image in, make it a little bit friendlier. If it's something that may be legally binding, I want to grab a signature that's going to come back in, I can do that as well. Let's apply those changes. And simply all I want to do when this form has been executed externally is push it back into SharePoint. So SharePoint Online, and I'm going to create an item. Select my connection. Again, just pop in my URL, retrieve lists. I should have a customer feedback list. And let's just construct the title first of all. So what I might do is combine a number of different elements of the request into the title. So we could say customer name. Let's go with current date, and I can insert start event, the information from the data lookup, and call it feedback. And then I just want to match up what's on the start event to what's in SharePoint. So I'm just going to add the fields from that SharePoint list: email, feedback, name, and product. Could have done select all, add them up, and just work through that. So I've got email. I love this open square bracket 2-click. It's really, really quick and easy to complete a form. Customer name, and finally my product. Data lookup 1. Okay. Result is going to be a SharePoint item ID. That can come back from SharePoint if you want to keep updating, if you want to move that through, if you wanted to then say, let's send an email to an end user. That could go to somebody to then remediate the issue, could assign a task, so on and so forth. We can say just feedback received and complete. something like that. You could obviously assign a task, whatever you want to do, generate a document if it's something that has to be reported on. It's a really, really simple workflow with a start event form that lives beyond the firewall. So let's just publish. Customer feedback. Let's call this description external form to SP Online and publish. So in a few minutes, we've got us a working solution there with no minimal barriers of authenticating, logging in, so on and so forth. Now, because it's an external form, you could also configure that with Google reCAPTCHA verification. So that is an option as part of that form as well. When you submit, you get asked to match up traffic lights and cars and things like that. We're just going to simply complete the form.